The Columbian is pleased to welcome candidates for Vancouver School Board Position 3, I believe. We have Wendy Smith and Heather Christiansen. Thank you for coming in. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor, and I believe you met Jody Campbell and Greg Brown of our editorial board. And we, just so you know, we are videotaping this, and we will post it unedited on our website for the benefit of our readers. And with that, we will get started. We'll begin with introductions. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll keep this brief. Give us a little bit of background, explain why you're running for this position, and then we'll move on to specific issues involved in the race. And we'll start with Wendy.
Okay. So I'm a lifelong resident of Vancouver. I attended K through 12 Vancouver schools in the Vancouver School District.
What school?
Which schools?
Yeah.
Philida, basically Columbia River. So yeah, I graduated from Columbia River. I don't have to say when, right?
No, you don't. I did too.
That's up to you.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So when my husband and I were deciding which district we wanted to raise our kids in, it was no debate. We wanted to be in the Vancouver School District, and we're both teachers, so you know that was an informed decision. So I'm very proud of the school district. I have 2 children. My daughter is 8; she's a 3rd grader, and our son is 4, so he'll be in kindergarten next year. And that's one reason why I'm running, to bring that parent perspective to the board. So right now, all of those board members who are currently serving have had children in the system. And one of Michelle Juvenazzi still has a child enrolled, a high school student. But I'm the parent of young children, so that's a different perspective. But I think a really important one to bring that focus on the younger, earlier grades. I'm also a classroom teacher. This is my 14th year of teaching. I'm a high school teacher in the Evergreen District, and that's the other reason why I'm running. I think that's another valuable perspective to bring to the school board. I see every day the realities of the classroom. I live those realities every day with my students. I understand students, I understand families, I understand the system, and I understand how school board policies are going to be implemented in the classroom. And those are the 2 primary reasons why I'm running.
Great, thank you. Heather?
Yes, hi, my name is Heather Christiansen, and I am also a mother of a 10-year-old boy that attends Vancouver Public Schools. I went to school in Vancouver Public Schools for my early education, and in my later education I went to Battleground Public Schools. I am interested in ensuring that my son gets a great education, and ensuring that the strategy of the Vancouver Public Schools and the board continues to maintain its excellence. We did attend early on in my son's education, he was in private school, and then we moved over to the public schools, and we were just delightfully impressed. It's been a great experience, great teachers, great school. I can just speak to the success of public schools. I am a employee of a public company over in Wilsonville, Oregon. I am the Director of Legal Services, Global Ethics and Compliance, and I have a unique perspective, not only being a mother of a young child, but also I have governance, financial experience, and also bond experience. I come from a unique background. I worked for law firms since I graduated from high school and in through college, my college years. I graduated from Washington State University. I've been a long-time Clark County resident. For a bit, we moved over to Portland on a floating home. And then we had my son, which is our pride and joy. So I just want to say thank you for the time, and I appreciate it.
Right, well, thanks for coming in. Let's start with the broad question. The legislature has made some changes to school funding. How do you think that will play out? What do you see? How will that impact the future of Vancouver schools? And we'll start with that.
Okay. I believe that there are some There, of course, under the McCleary bill, there's some funding that needs to happen. Right now, we're operating using the levy dollars to make ends meet, and we do have the bond levy that was just passed for our capital programs for our schools. So that will also have a impact if we don't pass those funds, and which is going to ultimately hurt our classrooms, because the legislation that was passed for the smaller teacher to student ratio is also going to impact the fact that if we do not follow with those capital construction improvements for our students, it's going to have a really difficult impact on our students. And also the implications to the taxpayers as well.
Wendy, how do you think the legislature, the funding will play out?
Well, we're already seeing the effects. So this year, the Vancouver School District had to dip into their contingency funds, a little over $2 million, to cover the shortfall of the funding that was sent down by the state. We were expecting more. We didn't quite get what we were expecting. So we're already seeing immediate impacts. One of my biggest concerns, and it's a concern that's shared by Superintendent Webb, which is every district has to renegotiate the salary allocation model for teachers. So we used to have a state model that every district used, and then would enhance with local levy money. But now that's going away, so every district has to negotiate its own salary schedule for its staff. So that, I believe, will be happening it will be happening next year. Everyone's going to do it next year. So it kind of remains to be seen how that goes. I also have concerns about appropriate funding for special education. So there's a shortfall there as well, which means that the district is having to tap into local levies to fund special education, which in my opinion is basic education and should be paid for by the state. But we're still having to use local levy money for that as well. And then we also didn't pass the capital budget, which isn't part of the McCleary decision, but certainly has an impact on our school district. When I asked about this, I was told that there's no immediate impacts. The planning has already been kind of in place, but next year, the year after, the first projects on that bond, on the plan for the bond, are already in place and ready to go, but the next ones down the list might be impacted. So we're still waiting to see how that's going to play out as well. So it's a big concern.
Now, specifically, you mentioned special ed, and
Yeah.
Is that, under the legislature plan, is that included in basic education?
Well, it is included in basic education, but the funding that was provided didn't cover the costs of special education. So it is included, and we are getting money from the state for special education, but it's not anywhere near enough.
Now, with both of you are fairly new to, have you ever run for anything before?
I ran for freeholder, like with half of the
Okay.
county. But other than that, no.
Have you run for anything before?
I have not.
Okay, so being newcomers and you would be new to the board, what one thing would you change about the way Vancouver School Board goes about its business?
Well, I think I'm pretty pleased with the district as a whole. There's no one thing that I would point to say that this has to change. It's really more about making sure that the focus, Vancouver has a legacy of innovation and getting results and staying focused on the students. And I want to make sure that that continues. So we have the benefit that we're not running against an incumbent, it's an open seat. So there's nothing that I'm like, wow, this really has to change. It's more along the lines of making sure that they stay on the right trajectory, which I really believe they are on. But also, I'm a teacher, so it's also part of that, even an A student can always do better, right? So Vancouver's doing fantastic work. Doesn't mean that work is perfect, doesn't mean that it's not done. We still have an achievement gap that needs to be closed. We have the bond that's passed, and that's really exciting work. But I want to make sure that the schools that need that attention are getting that attention. We have some equity I have some equity concerns in the district, which the district has identified as an issue that needs to be focused on and targeted, and they're taking steps to address that. But I want to make sure that that focus stays on equity until those problems are resolved.
So what specifically do you mean by that?
Well, the achievement gap is an example of that. I think that the district, like every district, is grappling with how do we serve students who are living in poverty? How do we help our homeless students? And they've taken some really innovative steps. They are leaders in things like the family community resource centers that help our students living in poverty. They've done some wonderful work building relationships with local governments, with other local community groups. That's something that we need to keep doing, do more of. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be looked at. It's a very complex problem, and there's a lot of potential solutions.
Heather, what would you change about how the board goes about its business?
I don't think there's one thing I could identify that needs to be changed. I think that they are on an excellent success. The way that they've done their strategic planning is much like the way a company looks at a large operation with respect to utilizing resources, communicating transparency to the community. As I mentioned, I'm a proud parent of a 10-year-old son that was just recently given an iPad. As far as technology goes, we're ahead of our, I believe, all of our peers with respect to teaching the teachers to teach the students. I think that they've done an excellent job with forward thinking to understand the needs of our growing community. I think that, of course, we can do better with respect to children that are poverty and reaching out to schools. There's currently the 18 FCRCs out of the, I believe, 37 schools. So to get kids ready to learn and to take away those barriers to learning is also very important, to actually reaching out to those communities and continuing that. I think continuing that work is so vitally important as we see housing prices rise and we see competition for housing in our area. It's difficult for parents to maintain children in staying in the same school. I think that that's an issue that we need to reach out to students and make sure that they, that they have a safe place to go to. I think that also that Vancouver Public Schools District, under the direction of Dr. Webb, they've also done an amazing job at community outreach and just letting people know what's going on. I think that the access to the board meetings to understand what's going on is vitally important. I think that as what I've seen as far as testing and as far as how it's impacted my son and his learning, and he gets immediate feedback from the testing is amazing. So I think that there's also a lot of other issues. But I think that they're on the right, as Wendy said, the right trajectory to ensuring that there's continued success. And I would love to support that continued success. Coming from, like I said, a public company, I can see how strategic thinking, we all benefit from it as well. So.
You mentioned the FCRC, that's
Mm-hmm.
Family
Community Resource Centers.
And I'm sorry, how many schools have those?
18.
18.
And there's a roving van.
Okay, would you advocate, should those be in all of the Vancouver schools? Have
I
they
do, with the
been
higher.
beneficial?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have done quite a bit of research on that, and I have seen Tamara Shroop, excuse me for pronouncing her last name. Fantastic how they go around and they have they have partnerships with Share, and they have partnerships with other corporations where they go and they pick up food, and they've got food available, and coats and school supplies and housing vouchers, and also the amazing work that they've done with C-Tran to give kids an opportunity to travel for activities. So they've reached out to that community that desperately needs it. That we are one community. We're one family in the Vancouver School District, and I think that's so vitally important that folks know about these resources and they don't feel bad about asking for help if they're aware of these resources. So I believe that the transparency and the websites and everything that we've done, the Twitter accounts, and is bringing that knowledge of the FCRCs to the people that desperately need it. And I would love to continue that.
Just real quick, Wendy, would you advocate should we have those in all of the Vancouver schools?
I think we should definitely expand them. I think ideally, yes, it would be wonderful to have in every school. I think that every school has those students, even the schools that are in our higher socioeconomic neighborhoods still have those students who are struggling. So be able to provide those resources and access to those resources is essential. It's absolutely essential. We have the roving one, which I think is a nice kind of in between, right? Because they're not cheap, and because we don't necessarily have a physical space for all of them yet. And this is one of the things I'm really excited about in the bond is as we're building these schools, we're building designated, like dedicated spaces for them. Right now they're kind of squeezed into where they might be able to fit. And so their functionality, they are providing an absolutely essential resource. I think they could be more functional if we can give them the space that they need to do it. But yeah, I would advocate for expanding them, yeah. Those students are everywhere.
So you're making it tough for me as a resident of the Vancouver School District. So I see two very bright, well-informed candidates, and I want to vote for both of you. I'm not going to be able to do that because the odd will invalidate my ballot. So what would you say are the differences between the two of you?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Well, I'm going to return back to my experience as a public school educator. Like I said, this is my 14th year. I was a staff assistant before that. I've got 15 years experience working in the schools. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean that I know everything about every part of the system, but I know enough that I know which questions to ask. And that's a big part of being a school board director is asking questions, asking a lot of questions, asking challenging questions. So I would point to that as probably being the most significant difference between the two of us.
So I have the financial experience. I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets. I've managed bond offerings. I've managed construction projects. I've managed people. And with that said, that also plays well into the operations as far as from a governance perspective of a school district and being responsible for 24,000 students and approximately 3,000 teachers. Having that insight from working for a technology company and also working for various law firms in my career. I think that that is a different insight than what's currently on the board. And I think that I've volunteered a lot in my son's education, and I do understand the classroom and I understand the dynamics of the classroom. I have the greatest respect for teachers. We couldn't do it without you. So, but I also feel like there's another element that would be beneficial to the board that I could bring.
To follow up on that, Wendy, some people think that it would be better to keep teachers and the school board separate because at times they can be in adversarial positions. Can you understand that thinking or?
No, I'm gonna be honest. I don't see it as being an adversarial because I'm not an employee of the Vancouver School District, so
right.
It's a different sort of relationship. I'm a parent, I'm a community member, I'm a graduate of the district. So I see my relationship with the Vancouver District very different from my professional working relationship with a completely different district.
So,
And even that I want to characterize as adversarial. I would never characterize my professional relationship with the district as adversarial.
but do you see yourself then as a representative of the community?
Absolutely, of
Okay,
course.
not of the school district.
I see. Well, the school district is part of the community, so of the Vancouver School District, absolutely. So a school board director's job is to represent the community, to represent the interests of the community, the values of the community, the priorities of the community, and make sure that all of that is reflected in the schools of the community. I mean, these are our children, right? So we want our children to be educated in a way that fits the community. So to go back to your original question, I don't see that. I mean, I don't see it as teachers and district as being adversarial, and I certainly don't see evidence of that in the Vancouver School District at all.
Well, and tell me this then, do you think that the teachers, and you articulated that you're a teacher in the Evergreen District, and so would have a different role, obviously. But I think a lot of people would view it as teachers, when it comes to budgets, their answer is always more money should be in the classroom. Can you pull back from that and take a different view as your role on the board?
That more money should be in the classroom, or that the budget should be bigger overall? I guess there's two different questions.
Yes.
Okay, because I would hope that most of the money is going to the classroom
Right.
anyway.
Yeah, and those are two different questions.
That they would advocate for just a larger budget or a
Yes.
larger levy. I honestly don't know how to answer that question because I don't see it that way. I see this is my community, these are my people, these are our children, and that's the perspective that I'm coming at it from. I think that there's value to having that teacher's perspective on the board because the board it's deciding policy that's going to impact the classroom. It's going to impact the students, and who better to inform that policy than the person who has that direct relationship every day with the students and sees how that's going to be implemented and can recognize potential pitfalls as well, so that when that policy is crafted, it's policy that's going to work. So I don't see it that way at all. I see my role as being a member of the community, representing the community, advocating for students, and that is the true. I mean, the reality is the teachers, regardless of budgets, the teacher's perspective is always student-centered, always student-focused. That's just how teachers. That's the lens that we look at everything through. Is how is this going to affect students? How is it going to help students?
Real quick for both of you, let's start with Heather. What are your thoughts about school vouchers and charter schools?
So it's my understanding that there are no charter schools in the Vancouver Public School District. As far as vouchers, I believe that children should have an opportunity. I also believe that with vouchers, there needs to be some type of governance with those vouchers. There's numerous opportunities for children to attend schools in the Vancouver School District currently that we have, the magnet schools. And I do believe that we should give children and parents an opportunity to allow children to potentially, if they want to go outside, to have that opportunity. But that also has to be governed by for a charter school, a board of directors. Or there has to be some type of check and balance to ensure that if the taxpayer dollars do go to the vouchers, that there is sufficient oversight for that.
So you would kind of hedge, you could support them depending on how it's set up?
Yes,
I just want to make sure.
Absolutely. I think that one of the school boards is important to understand their obligation to the taxpayers. And I think that's important for also for us to have, the school board to have governance and transparency to make sure that the students are first and the students' needs are optimized to ensure that every child is successful and every child deserves to have an excellent education. And we do have the opportunities at the Vancouver School District currently. Could there be more? Absolutely. But with that said, there has to be those checks and balances and audits in place to ensure that the taxpayer dollars that are funding those vouchers are properly accounted for.
Wendy, vouchers, charter schools, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a strong advocate for public education. That's why I became a teacher. I'm a civics teacher. That's what I do. So I'm not at all in support of vouchers at all in any way. I see them as taking money away from our public education system. And to look at students as if they were a specific dollar amount is an oversimplification of how the public school system works. So I don't agree with using public funding in private schools. I don't agree with using public funding to support religious schools. I'm absolutely against vouchers, just to be clear. As far as charter schools, I think Vancouver is an excellent example of we don't really even need charter schools. We're accomplishing it just fine using that oversight, using that governance. My worry about charter schools and vouchers both is that a lot of times they're not necessarily beholden to the same protections for our students, civil rights protections, protections for disabled students. So again, I think that we have our schools should be a reflection of our community, and I think Vancouver's the community of Vancouver, their values are that we serve all students equally, that we protect all students, and so I just don't see it as even really. We don't need it. We have school choice here in Vancouver already. Vancouver School District has been excellent at providing students and families choice without denying anybody any of those protections.
Heather, do you think that Vancouver students do have enough choice? Should there be more magnet schools? What would you recommend?
I do think there should be more magnet schools. I believe that there are amazing choices. I've got friends that their children have gone to iTech and VSAA. But I do believe also that some of the opportunities that are offered in some of those schools can be extended. I believe that we should have, to have children or students to be college ready or to be future ready in a technical field requires technical training, requires the students to have that opportunity. So I think that yes, we can expand that. I mean, I think that that's for us to keep our community whole and to keep our community in a productive manner, and to allow students options. I think that we can increase the options and we can increase the magnet schools to offer those choices.
Well, that said, what are your thoughts about the way the current federal government is approaching education?
Well, I have some serious concerns about. I see some of the rescinding of policies that potentially they're removing some of those protections for our students that are so important. Which is why I think that serving on the school board is such an important role too, because regardless of what the federal government or the Department of Education decides to do, our local school board can continue to provide those services and those protections to our students. So I do have some concerns about what's coming out of the Department of Education.
Heather?
I'm sorry.
What are your thoughts about the way the current administration is approaching public education?
I as well have some serious concerns about the way the federal government has approached public education. There's some equity issues, I believe, and that are going on that we have done a great job, or the Vancouver Public Schools has done a great job with respect to having programs and diversity programs and things like that. And I believe that they can continue to do that, and they do it well. Except we can probably do a better job as well. And I think my concern is that that it's it's difficult at times. There's a teacher shortage. There's significant challenges with finding teachers as well. So I think that that coupled with the changes in the legislature is going to be a challenge for all.
What role do local school, what role do local school board members play in terms of advocating for public policy and change at the state and federal level?
I'll go ahead and speak. Well, I know that our school board has a political liaison that actively lobbies. We also have a lobbyist that works for the school district. So obviously there's hopefully open communication between the state and the local district. And I'm a bit of a political junkie, so that would be something I would really look forward to being involved in. I have lobbied in Olympia before in the past for WEA, but also as a private citizen. So that's certainly a role that I'm very comfortable with, sitting down and having those very frank and honest conversations about what they are discussing and debating in Olympia and how that affects us here locally. They need to have that information because a lot of them aren't teachers, they aren't educators, they aren't school administrators, they don't have experience in education. So having those conversations on a regular basis, I would see as being really, really important.
So, yes. So currently, there is a committee that puts together the public policy statement for the Vancouver Public School District, and so we do have lobbyists that go to Olympia and lobby on behalf of the school district. And then there is also, as Wendy mentioned, a liaison that goes and sits and listens to the education legislature and then meets back, and they meet with the superintendent to understand what's going on as far as statewide, federal legislation with respect to the public schools. So Vancouver Public Schools does a great job in being on the forefront of the changes in legislature, and I work for my public company role. I'm also the treasurer of our political action fund. So I understand the dynamics of lobbying and the importance of understanding what's going on and the feedback and how that comes back. Almost in a circular way, the information that you receive and then the information that's also needed to go back to the school district as well.
I have a quick question. So, do you regularly attend the school board meetings, the Vancouver School Board meetings?
Yes, I've been very
I have.
And I'm sorry, how old are your kids?
8 and 4.
And Heather,
I have one 10-year-old.
10-year-old?
11 in 2 weeks.
So
Yes.
so they have 7, 10, 14 years left.
Mhm.
What do you envision for the district by the time they get out of high school? What would be your biggest wish? What would you hope to see in Vancouver public schools?
I would love to see 100% graduation rate. I remember walking across that stage and never being so happy, and then thinking, as soon as I walked off, what am I going to do? So I would love to see that. I would love to increase the graduation rates. It's my understanding it's around 82% right now, and I'd love to move everyone up in all ethnicities to ensure that there is 100%. And I believe that we are on such a great path to strategic planning, which is very exciting for me. And also my family and my son, to see that he has a path to success with these options that are offered to him, whether he wants to go to a college or whether he wants to go to a career in trade. We have an amazing amount of opportunity, and the support that he also received from teachers in the school district and our community is inspiring. So that's what engages me and excites me, inspires me, and that's what I would love to see.
Wendy?
I think that as you said, you walk across that stage and then what's next, right? And that the answer to that question is what I would hope for my children and all the children in Vancouver School District, that they know what's next, that they've had a wealth of opportunities, a wealth of experiences, K through 12, and they have something really strong, foundational to build upon. Our goal is always to set up our students for success post high school, post K-12. So making sure that they have, and whatever that might be, making sure that everyone who wants to go to college is ready to go to college, and they have the tools that they need to get there. Making sure that anyone who wants to enter the career force right out of high school has those skills and those opportunities waiting for them. Just to make that they can make whatever choices are available to them, and they can take advantage of those opportunities. That's always the primary goal.
Great, I think we'll move along then. Give us your final pitch of why voters should support you, and please mention any notable endorsements you'd like to bring up. And we'll start with Heather.
Okay, great. So thank you for your time, and I want to just go ahead and re-emphasize that I have a well-rounded experience, not only from working for a public company, but also being involved in the community. I'm also on the Vancouver Public Schools Management Task Force. I've spent quite a fair amount of time in my son's classroom over the years, volunteering and understanding the dynamics, also with all the sports that he's involved in. And I, as well, I'm a longtime Clark County resident. I'm proud of our community, I'm proud of our schools, and I look forward to serving as well. And I did not seek any endorsements. I kept this in my own way, a nonpartisan race. I do not have any affiliations, and my one agenda is to remain true to the district, the students, and also the board of directors as well, to what I would like to be serving on. I also sit on a number of different boards of a public company, so I understand the dynamics, as I mentioned before, of good governance, and also the importance of transparency as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy?
So again, I really feel that it's important for our board to have a wide perspective of experiences and voices. That diversity of voices is what makes a board strong. So having that teacher voice, having the parent perspective, especially of young children, which we haven't had on the board for a really long time. I can't remember the last time we had a parent of elementary age children, so it's gotta been a while because I can't remember it. So those are, again, the primary perspectives that I want to bring to the board. And I agree that it's important to have those backgrounds in finance and in law and some of the other things that Heather has mentioned. And we do have those. We have Dale Rice with his background in finance, and we have Mark Stoker, who's a lawyer, an acting lawyer. So we have a variety of perspectives on the board. What we don't have is a teacher, an educator, someone who's in the schools every day. Serving on that board. You asked about notable endorsements. I do have several endorsements. Many groups reached out and asked to meet with me and interview, and I believe I also asked Heather to meet with them. And so I've been endorsed by the Vancouver Education Association, which represents the educators in the district. I've been endorsed by the Southwest Washington Central Labor Council, as well as some other local unions, which represents the working families of Vancouver. And obviously they have an investment in their children's schools as well. So IBEW, 48, the Carpenters, 1503, Vancouver Firefighters, they've all endorsed me. I've also had received endorsements from Kathy Gillespie, who is currently in this position on the school board. So that's who we're running to replace. And Monica Stonier, the representative out of the 49.
Great, well, thank you to you both.
Yeah,
Thank you.